Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. If you listen to this show regularly and you are a subscriber, thank you. But you may recall that the Leafs came back the first game after their road trip and played the Minnesota Wild. I spoke with Luke Fox, and I mentioned two things that I think are important to remember today. One, that I thought that the team looked worn down in that game against Minnesota. And the hope was that it was purely, hey, they were on a road trip and they came back, so they're a little burnt for this game. Then I said, I thought that this stretch was going to be about survival, that they got red hot, they built a bunch of positive momentum, they got themselves back into a postseason spot or hovering right around it. But that my expectation was not that this team was going to continue to just tear or strip off the league and do the 8 wins in 10 games type of winning. That it was going to have to be scratch and claw for a point here, scratch and claw for a win there, survive. The other thing I mentioned is heading into the Olympic break, what you felt comfortable with this team in order to not think that the best course of action, if you were not surviving, was to sell. The bar for that, where uncomfortability was going to set in, was 4 points back or more. As of today, as everybody knows, well, most people know, I was at the game last night, and the energy in the building didn't feel like people really understood that you lose to the Sabers in this one and they're 8 points back of the wild card. But that is what they are. They are 8 points back on January 28th with 29 games to play and with 10 games before the trade deadline. And we've done all of this discourse on the emotional fortitude of this hockey team. Whether they understand this fan base, whether they are connected to this city, whether they have enough talent. And last night, what I think was a little, I don't want to say surprising, because it's hard to say anything is surprising about this team at this point when it comes to failures. Do I wish that these guys felt more connected to the fan base? Of course I do. They brought in Daryl Sittler yesterday, and he's got a bunch of his former teammates there. Ian Turnbull's there. Lanny McDonald's there. Dave Tiger Williams is there. And you see Sittler sweaters in the stands. You see a lot of older people who, that's their guy. That was their favorite player. And it's hard not to look around the arena and see, all the different eras of fans who are just there, again, to enjoy a hockey game and root for the local club. And I wish that there was seemingly a bit of a better understanding from this core of players of who the people are that show up for these games. But, maybe that's asking too much in 2026. Maybe the dynamics of sports, the salaries that pro athletes make across leagues, the way that social media has made us feel like there's more bad people out there than good people. Maybe the time requirements on every one of us who feel like there's just so much on our plates that adding that added layer, maybe the just less social interactions, all these different things, where we're at, that's too much to ask. Fine. But as I'm looking at Lanny McDonald and I'm looking at Daryl Sittler and Dave Tiger Williams, and they're standing at center ice, and they're presenting Daryl Sittler with a stick with all of his teammates on it. All I can think about is a time where I was at a Conn Smythe dinner, and I watched Daryl Sittler and Tiger Williams speak about what it meant to be a Maple Leaf to them. And it was great. It was really emotional. But the biggest part of the night, and I cried at a gala, at a banquet, whatever the hell it was. I felt like almost a little embarrassed because I actually cry at this thing every time I'm there because it's Easter Seals and these unbelievable kids go up and tell their stories of triumph and what this camp means to them. But I got emotional as well that night listening to those guys talk about the Leafs, but also primarily their teammates because Lanny McDonald couldn't be there. He was sick. And the two guys on the stage were so overcome with emotion that they were both crying and that the room is feeling the weight of this. And you think about the import that they had in each other's lives, how they forged these bonds as hockey players together, as teammates who played hard for one another. And those guys didn't win Stanley Cups here, but they're beloved. So we can talk about playing for the fans all we want, but how about playing for each other? How about just that? Because before this game, the Toronto Maple Leafs had a leadership meeting. Their head coach has been trying to drill the same things into them now for weeks. They look exasperated. They look burnt out. They look completely tired of the media. They look completely tired of the discourse. But at some point, you would think, hey, you guys are hockey players. You're professional athletes. You play a sport. Go out there and play for each other. Who cares who's against you? That's like the biggest trope in sports, but it also is because it's real. Play for the guy beside you. And watching the game last night, I just did not get a sense of that. I got a sense of a team that frankly doesn't have enough talent. That's clear. They can't defend well enough. Right now, they can't get a save. Joe Woll is fighting it. And they look exhausted. And I don't think it's just the schedule. I don't think that it's the wear and tear with the injuries. I see a team that looks mentally fatigued. I see a group of guys that, frankly, appear to be a little checked out. Matthew Nyes, after the game, is talking about how he doesn't know what the standings are because he's so confident that the group is going to get in. And I can't help but hear that and go, how could you possibly be? After this, like, how could you possibly be that confident in this group when you're out there sharing the ice with these guys and putting together performances like that one last night? So I think personally, it's over. They're 8 points back. There's 10 games left before the deadline. And it's not even just, hey, could you rattle off some wins here against the lowly Vancouver Canucks and the Seattle Kraken and the Calgary Flames and put yourself back into that near 3-point position or whatever the hell it is. I don't see it. I do not see the fortitude within this group to be able to prove that to be the prudent course of action for this team. They need to sell. And it's a complicated sell because most people don't believe that this general manager will be here next year. And I think that, yeah, there's a lot of merit to that the coach won't be here. And do you want that guy selling? And is he willing to sell when his job is on the line? Because if they don't make the playoffs, it's sealed. And I think this is where the grown-ups need to step in. The adults need to be the adults. And everybody needs to be real about this team. Justin Bourne of Real Kipper and Bourne joins me now. What's up, buddy? Great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, fella.
So I'm going to start with this. I watched you guys on your show the other day talk about Brad Treliving, right? And pretty much this circumstance of, and you were making the point that, okay, everybody says he can't sell, but if the team's out of a playoff spot, what are we doing here? You have to sell. And if this guy wants another job someday in any capacity in a front office, I have a hard time believing that, someone would look at it and go, oh, you didn't take any action because you were fighting for your own job? Yeah, you know what? We'd like to have you aboard versus, oh, actually, you evaluated the talent that you had in front of you and the team that you had in front of you and the discrepancy between you and a postseason position and decided to make the proper result. But you had a guy like Kipper who's very plugged in, who is talking about how that's an insanely difficult thing to do when you're talking about a job that pays you what it does and has the allure of what it does, which is being the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so you guys are having this back and forth about it. But honestly, I don't know if this was 2 days ago or 3 days ago or where they were in the standings. But now they're 8 points back firmly of all of the teams that they are chasing. And it's not even just that they're 8 points back, it's how they look 8 points back, getting 1 point in a 5-game homestand against some of the best teams in the NHL and not looking at all like they are on their level from a way that they start a game to the way that they finish a game. And so I guess the first question to you is, do you still have those reservations that they are going to be able to do the mature thing? Because I can't feel, but when I'm looking at this now, that anybody with even 1 ounce of self-respect when it comes to evaluating a hockey team wouldn't be on the same track here.
Yeah. I don't have any doubt that they'll have to do the right thing, Bunk, because if you look at like Kevin Adams in Buffalo, the best thing that can happen to them is Buffalo gets good. If Buffalo's red hot, he gets to go, okay, look, this is how I left that team. Hire me again. Yzerman leaves Tampa Bay, and he gets a lot of credit for what Tampa did after he left. He was a part of the construction of those teams that won cups, and that's part of what made him a highly sought after guy. So for Tree, to your point, no, you're not going to leave, set fire to things and then run out of town. I mean, I think you have to show organizations for your next job that you'll do the right thing for the organization. And there is, and Kipper says it's hard. Well, okay, do hard things.
Yeah.
That's like such a frustration for me with a lot of the stuff. It's like, wow, feels bad or tough to do. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, okay. So, a lot of things are, so you just got to do the hard thing sometimes. And it shouldn't even be hard, because I think if you don't come to them and say, here's what I need to do, they're going to go to you and go, you need to do this, right?
Oof, I can't even think about something worse than that. Honestly, like as a professional, is having to be told that you have to do something by a superior is a nightmare, especially if the thing in front of you is obvious, right? Like it's one thing if it's complicated, it's another if it's very, very clear that this is the path that you need to take. And so I'm with you. I think that he would get far more credit if he does do an adequate job selling, a good job that sets them up. But also, I think that it's even more layered beyond this guy's job security. I actually think that this now has to do with the future of this hockey team. That if you believe in Austin Matthews and William Nylander, right, and you want to keep those guys, and I mentioned this the other day to Ryan Whitney. So Austin Matthews, in Elliot Friedman's piece, started negotiating with the team 2 years before his contract came up. And the thing that was sort of lost to me in that entire piece was this one line of Matthews basically agreed to resign so long as, quote, it wasn't a fugitive-like crash. And I'm looking at this right now, and I'm going, this appears to me as though it is a fugitive-like crash. And if you don't sell pieces and you don't try to restock the cupboards and you miss the postseason and you go into an offseason where you're letting multiple players walk for nothing or overpaying some of those players who you already know what you have with this group and with this team, with the idea of, hey, maybe the 6th oldest team in hockey will suddenly see a Bourne the following year. That's crazy to me in terms of your risk assessment of the team's best player and their captain, in terms of all of a sudden him actually forcing your hand and looking at this situation the way Marner did, going, yeah, I just don't see that this is going to ever work out here.
Yeah. The line that's stuck in my head all morning, because I'm writing an article as soon as I'm done chatting with you, and the line I've got stuck in my head is, the bill always comes due. It always comes due. You can do this for years. I watched the Chicago Blackhawks, trying to win cups and extend that run and hang on and win the next one. The bill comes due and you miss the playoffs for 5 years. I watched the Red Wings make the playoffs 26 straight years, 25 straight years. I remember those teams. I was like, I don't think the Red Wings can ever be bad. All I've ever seen them do is be good. The bill comes due. So the Leafs haven't won their cup, but they spent just like those teams trying to get there. Every deadline, add. This guy's an own rental. There goes this guy, go through the laundry list of guys they let walk for nothing, trying to win a cup. It's okay when you've won the cup, when you're Chicago, and you can go, this pain is worth it. Now this is cyclical. We're down, we're up, we're down, we're up. It won't feel worth it to the Leafs. I'll argue it was worth it at the time to make some of those deals. I get that. But the bill comes due. And we're there now where the bill has been put on the table, and Tree and Berube and Pelly and Matthews and everyone's looking at each other to see who's going to just go to their wallet first. Who's paying this?
They got to
Because
do it.
someone's paying.
Yeah, they got to do
And
credit card roulette.
totally, we're waiting to see right now, and I do think that what you're talking about is very real. That Matthews is part of the equation here. Are you going to try to hang on to be good to show, like kind of like Vancouver was doing with Hughes? And if things don't go right, it could go just the same way Hughes went. So there's a lot at stake.
Yeah, I know that this is going to get spun as, oh, you're just a Toronto media guy. You're creating problems that don't need to be created. Like no one's talking about Matthews right now. No, I am absolutely talking about Matthews. I also mentioned yesterday with Whitney, there's a scenario where 34 goes and plays in the Olympics and he is spectacular and leads them to a gold medal and becomes a true blue bona fide household name in the United States. Like he mentioned how TJ Oshie is a hero there because of penalties, right?
Yeah.
And you think about the pop that the Kachuk brothers got from fights in that tournament. Matthews scores a bunch of goals. He is going to become immediately someone that all American markets start to talk about. This guy's only 2 years away. How do you position yourself to get Austin Matthews? What would you be willing to give up to get Austin Matthews? And I honestly, I don't think it's, of course, like, so you fire Brad Treliving, right? You bring in a new general manager, a new president, whatever it is. What do you think the first conversation is going to be for that guy? You think it's going to be looking at the free agent class? You think it's going to be the going to the draft guys? It's going to be, I need to meet with Austin Matthews and see where his head is at because we're 2 years away from him needing a contract. And we need to know how invested he is with this hockey team because you're right. You cannot end up in a Quinn Hughes situation where you're halfway through a season next year and he's looking at it going, yeah, I'm tired of this. And now I'm kind of putting you over a barrel with my no move clauses and the fact that I don't want to be here.
You know what really kills me in thinking about all this is I remember when Shanahan first got hired way back when it was like, I'm going to take a year and just assess the organization. You know, there's a lot of rot and the team was bad and trying to figure it out. And that's okay in that scenario where the team was god awful. You know, when Treliving and Berube got here, both of them at various times said things that were like, I don't know what was happening before I was here, but you know, we're looking into it now. And I hate that. It's like, you know, if I went into any job, I would have to have done some background and know what I'm walking into. That's part of the deal is kind of knowing. So I look at Matthew Darsh, who gets the job on Long Island, and Noah Dobson immediately is like, I need a big deal. I need 10, $11 million times 8 years. I'm your best young D. Let's do it. And he was like, I don't think that works for us.
Yeah.
Like he was just new. And he said, well, sorry, this doesn't work. So you look at Tree and the Marner situation, and everyone goes, well, he had just been there for 2 weeks when he had to make that decision or something. It's like, okay, well, that decision was still one that had to be made. You know, so whatever comes after this, from the jump, you miss that opportunity. And with Matthews, you can't miss it again. You have to figure out what's going to happen well and early, and you can't be left 2 years, let him play 2 more years and then go, wow, it's too bad. He's just going to go somewhere else. Well, that can't happen.
No. And the reason why I'm saying that the sell to me is so obvious is because if you're looking at it and saying, we want to keep Austin Matthews, there's no way that you could sell to me that the best course of action is to grind out this season, keep all your pieces, miss the playoffs, enter next year, not have your first round pick next year, by the way. I guess like it is top 10 protected. And given the way that this team looks right now, you could have it.
Top 5 protected.
That's this draft.
Okay.
I'm talking about like you're going into next year.
Oh, is the next one top 10 protected?
Next one is top 10 protected. You go into that season going, all right, hey, we didn't really move anybody. We don't have anything in the cupboards. We're hoping,
new assets.
Yeah, we're hoping for another positive regression year from Easton Cowan at 21 that he will suddenly take a leap as a player. Like, no, they are an old hockey team. As you said, the bill has come due. There is one responsible choice. If it's either retool or rebuild, that's to me on the table. There is no more draw out this line of these players and this team. And so the question about rebuild doesn't come until the offseason. Once you've set up your new organizational structure and you have that conversation with Matthews. But you have to put yourself in the best position for both of those things, right? That's the responsible thing to do in this moment. So I want to go through with you in terms of the retool, rebuild, guys that you're trying to either re-sign or that you're not really actively shopping unless the price is clearly bananas, right? Like if someone comes to you and offers you the world for Jake McCabe, I don't think that you say, well, we absolutely positively can't do this, right? Like there's a price, but he's not someone that I would say is likely to be moved. And you as an organization are likely looking at it saying, yeah, we're probably better off if we have this guy in the cupboards and we're not moving him at this deadline. So I kind of want to go through the realistic names. I'm not going to waste time on like Matthews trade at the deadline or
Right. Yeah.
Nye's trade at the deadline, right? Or Tavares who just signed. Like, there's just no way. Although,
No.
quick Tavares aside, do you think he's thought about the money that he could have gotten free agency being somewhere else, like at least a couple of times?
I actually think that, like, and this is, probably not a great point in his favor either, but I think he wants to be a Toronto dad.
Yeah.
I think he's got his family and they're all set up and everyone's happy. And this is something Kip has railed about, is that when guys come home here often, you hope it's for the right reasons, not just because it's very convenient to live your family life here as an NHLer in Toronto.
I will say to him, I really do like when I
He
watch him
cares.
play. Yeah, he cares, and he's got the motor. It's just being there last night. I looked over at our mutual friend Chris, and I asked him. I went, "How many shifts did you really feel Tavares tonight?" He went, "I think one." I went, "You think, eh?" Because
Yeah.
he's just not a driver in the same way. And do I think he could get hot when the schedule cools off and they come back from a big old break? Like, yeah, I think that's on the table for him. But in terms of being an 82 game driver, it's unbelievable. He took that contract and he absolutely left money on the table. But my prevailing thought coming out of that game was, thank God he did, because he's actually like closer to appropriately paid than what we thought he could have got, which was the $7 million this offseason.
Yeah. The best case scenario for him is probably he plays with two really good drivers. Like maybe
Yeah.
Cowan becomes a guy who can drive the play and a couple of possession guys and just gets him in the O zone a lot and it finds him around the net 25 times a year.
So we'll start with the big one.
Okay.
Are you asking Morgan Riley to waive his no move ahead of the deadline?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
you
is
have to.
priority 1A. It's been the running. He's been a part of it the whole way through.
Mhm.
And I think he's been on for the most 5-on-5 goals against in the NHL this year. Last time I checked, I like the man Morgan Riley. I like hearing him talk. I think he's a good dude. He's not physical. He's not defensive. It's time to move on. They need a fresh start there.
They need a fresh start. The counter to it would be, what if he says no to you, which you can't be afraid of. But in terms of the way your group responds to a guy in the leadership structure being pressured to waive his no move for the second year in a row, right? Where it's like you asked Marner to do this last year at the deadline. Now you're asking Morgan Riley to do this at the deadline. I would say that, again, you have to, what did you say? You went like, the job is hard. You have to do hard things. So this is part of what the gig is. My only reservation is if you're looking at it and you feel like nobody's going to take him, is there at least a part of you that is fearful of, wow, you guys look a little bit like a circus asking two of your like core pieces that are respected around the league to waive their no moves that they worked their asses for at the trade deadline. Still, I think you have to do it because whenever you can get off this number, if you can get off this number, you need to take as much time as you possibly can to explore your options.
Brian Burke had a whole thing that he would never ask anyone to waive their no move clause, no trade clause. That was like they earned that right right in their contract negotiations. I talked or was listening to JP Barry, maybe someone was saying that, a lot of guys get these no move and no trade clauses at the cost of upwards of $1 million. That's, the pay cut they take to get these sort of clauses. Unfortunately for those people, and unfortunately for Berkey, so many people got them that it watered them down to the point where they're relatively meaningless. 8, 10, 12 guys in every roster have a no trade clause, and those guys are getting traded all the time.
Yeah.
It's not protecting anyone. That maybe it's helping them from going to certain Canadian markets. I think it's killing us in Canada. The no trade list. However, I do think that now it's kind of commonplace. 2 guys with a no trade clause per team get asked to get moved every year. I don't think it's that rare.
Max Domi.
Gone. I didn't mean that to come off so callous, but I have put a lot of thought into this. Samir Naha, he's gone.
Yeah.
No, that's one that, like, to me is, I wrote down yesterday 11, 63, 53, and 89. So that's Cowan, Robertson, Michelli, and Domi. You can have 2. You can't have 3. You definitely can't have 4. Small offense only, bad defensive forwards.
Yeah. I agree with that deeply.
Yeah.
Here's the the Domi case goes as follows. Pro to keeping him is number one, Matthews likes him, and that this would be the second year in a row where Matthews loses a guy that he has familiarity with, that's on his wing, who he feels can get him the puck and he likes playing with. And two is his last name is Domi, and he grew up cheering for this team. And it not only, I don't even know if it sells jerseys, honestly. Like I'm there yesterday. I didn't really see a ton of Max Domi jerseys, but there is still some connectivity to the past that they like having.
Totally. I think everyone is afraid of that. I think if his name was Smith, it wouldn't be happening right now.
It would be an absolute no-brainer, and you wouldn't even be discussing it, and that's why I'm bringing it up here. Here's the case against.
And listen, like I'll admit, I have some hesitance. Ty Domi does great work with the Clark Gillies Foundation, with their charity. Like, he's a good man and the family does good things. But like from a hockey perspective, given their path and his age and his contract and his fit, it doesn't work. Him and Matthews, when they're on the ice together, are around even in goal differential.
They're a negative goal differential.
Right. Like I think -2 or something, like right there. And when Domi is not on the ice with him, he's like -17. Like it's like so in a way, it's like he has to play with Matthews. The Matthews line is worse when he plays with him.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That is that when I said the case against, you just made it. That's the case against. You probably don't have more data on any player on this roster outside of Morgan Riley of changing up the role, changing up the line mates, changing up the situations, giving the opportunities to, and knowing conclusively that it is just not working from a hockey standpoint. So
totally. Last night, Domi had 3 points. He had a goal and 2 assists, and it was just pizza.
And missed checks and just like blow-bys in the neutral zone. And, you're watching it and going, the juice is just not worth the squeeze here. We know what it is. And as nice as it is every once in a while that he'll fight a guy and he'll give you a good quote after the game about sticking up for one another. Yeah, it's just not worth it to me. So I'm actively shopping him. Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Oh, by the way, I want to throw in a clause before I'm asking about these guys. Like, because OEL, I think the premise here would be, hey, of course you shop OEL because he's coming in a valuable season and he's an older player. The clause to some of this stuff is if you're moving off Tree Living because you don't think he's that good at the job, how many of these guys that have contracts, for example, would you rather the next guy handle, right? Like there has to be that counterbalance in this discussion when we're saying, well, yeah, he's an automatic move. You're going, well, okay, I understand that, but what changes in terms of the value if you're trying to shop him in the offseason and you feel like you've got someone who is better at the job? So OEL.
So OEL is the one I hate discussing the most because I like him the most. He's been hard to play, greasy, gets points. He's playing 20+ minutes. He's on a cheap deal. He's everything the Leafs need and I love right now. But there's no doubt his value is at its absolute highest.
Yeah.
This guy is a real asset that is going to depreciate. He is a yacht, some sort of speedboat that we just bought that as soon as we drive it away from the boat dealership is going to be, you play him next year, he's not worth nearly as much. You can give him to someone cheap going into the playoffs this year. So someone has to play D for this team. What's it look like, if you move off, Benoit, OEL? I think if you can get a first plus for Ekman-Larsson, you got to do it.
I think he's the most important guy to move.
You do?
Yep. Because of what you just said.
Just because of his current value.
Well, listen, I'm happy to be wrong here, right? Like if the market is the market and OEL gets traded for a second-round pick, I'm going to go, oh, mistake.
Yeah.
You should have kept him for the reasons that you just outlined and the idea of like who's going to play for your team next year. And if you are trying to retool, then there's a case for keeping him saying, well, he's been arguably our most important defenseman this season, and I would argue he has been. So if you're going to move off of him at a number that is, 3.5, you got to be getting something back. But my belief is, given the market and how many teams are out there that are hungry, a guy who is playoff tested, playing the best hockey of his career, got picked to his Olympic team because of the way that he is playing, brings you snarl, can play on both sides. It just, that mix to me reeks of that's who you sell. That's who you sell high. And if you go into the offseason And all of a sudden, the new general manager is trying to make this decision of like, okay, well, we've kept him. So now we're probably not trading him in the offseason when teams aren't as desperate. And now we're looking at our team trying to evaluate it in terms of what we have moving forward this year. I think you're waiting until the next deadline, which if it goes poorly, like this year does as well, you're talking about the steepest drop off in terms of what you could get in return from anybody else. And so it's why, to me, he's the most important domino in this. And like, if Tree Living is cutting that layer of fat from the team, that tells you that pretty conclusively, hey, these guys are really invested in trying to make this team better the following season and change it in a material fashion.
I do think there's a way that you get a first here. There's firsts that you can get, and maybe not first too many, plural, but like I think Bobby McMahon could fetch one.
I'm hoping
So
he can.
if you get to a point where you've got multiple firsts all of a sudden, you have a chance to turn things around. Those are valuable chips in the summer and when guys become available, which happens every year. OEL 16 team no trade list, by the way.
Yeah, which at least a little bit easier to navigate.
Much easier, and it's
Yeah.
going to be all the good teams and
Yep.
the teams that are in contention.
And that's what he's going to want to do is go somewhere where he can win. So you mentioned McMahon, so I'll just do that right now. He's an unrestricted free agent, but I think a lot of people will be looking at it going, well, shouldn't you be trying to tender him a contract extension right now? And my case against this is like, okay, you don't have his speed and you're already a slow team. So the case for is that. The case against is he is 29 years old. Like we think about him as a younger guy because he came up later, but a 29-year-old coming off of a career year and looking at your cap sheet and saying, are we needing to commit to this because it's a certainty? I'm not sure. So I think he actually fits for me personally into the OEL category of if you get the right piece back, it's an absolute no-brainer. If the market doesn't materialize, you have to go to him and say, we need you on a bargain discount deal. Otherwise, I think we're actually just taking whatever asset we can get back.
I think you make the case that he is maybe the most obvious or important sell. My theory with NHL players is guys who come in as pedigree guys, first round picks, good their whole life, super talented. They get up to this plateau of talent where they're at and they maintain it for a pretty long time. They're legitimately talented. They figure things out. They're NHL players their whole career. The guys who take longer to make it, they get good at 26, 27. It's a pretty short turnaround on the other side too. They've just got everything going for them. An example of that might be Justin Hall. Justin Hall took a long time to crack the league, make the league. He had a few really good years with the Leafs. And after that, went to Detroit and they basically couldn't use him. And I would say in his last year at the Leafs was there. So I worry with McMahon. You give him 4 times 4, whatever the numbers I've heard bigger.
Yep.
I think you're not going to be real pleased with how that looks. So I'd be on board with that too.
Basically, the way that I'm thinking about this is if you're Bobby McMahon and you made, let's see here, I think his contract is 1.5-ish range.
He needs to give a discount of 0 nickels. He needs to make every penny he can.
Yeah, so he makes $1.3 million.
Yeah.
And he was a late bloomer into the league, so he entered it at 27 years old.
Yeah.
This guy is not taking a haircut, and nor should he. Honest to God, Bobby McMahon, go get your money, brother. Like
$2.1 million in career earnings.
You cannot go to this guy. I mean, you can because you got to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
But the idea that you're going to go to this guy and say, will you do 3 years at 3.5? And he would look back at you and go, you guys gave me my chance. Like, nobody. Bobby McMahon, and I actually like his game, and I think that he's taken a big step this year. He's earned a lot of his ice time. I've pointed multiple times to the fact that I think he's added some snarl to his game, which everybody was dying for. He's shown that in multiple moments. His speed, he's one of the fastest players in the NHL. You got to trade him. There's just no way that this contract for him with this group is going to look good for you, that you're signing Bobby McMahon to 4 years, $4.5 million, and 2 years from now going, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to say no way, but I think that the likelihood of that versus bringing back the asset and being able to flip it for somebody else that is of somewhat equal caliber, maybe in a different way, but not at cementing in your future is obvious to me. So he's an automatic has to go kind of guy.
Though, you can't trade the whole team, but these guys you've named, the first 4 names we've mentioned here are pretty good. One thing I will say that I think the Leafs have going for them right now is there's more player movement in the league now, or going to be, than I think in a long time. People are more willing, more interested. You look at the NBA and how that's kind of
Mhm.
spawned this like big names leaving. We've seen it in the NHL recently. Guys get unhappy with their situations, teams blow it up. I people say right now, okay, you're trading all these guys. Who are you going to get? It's like we don't really know. You have to just have money in the bank for when guys become available.
So I get it. You can't trade the whole team. And that's kind of how this segment is coming off, where you're like, this guy, trade, 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 trade.
Yes.
Everyone's
Yeah.
gone. I think that you have to be at least trying, because there's just dudes that are obvious, right? Like Michelli. You're not bringing back Michelli next year. So
No.
you take whatever you can get. That's an easy automatic. I think that,
Next year,
sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
Next year,
Yeah.
your Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, Nyes, Nick Waugh, Cowan, those guys are all definitely here. Probably Dakota Joshua, because he hasn't had much of a shake
No.
at it. McCabe, no Dakota Joshua.
No, I'm saying there's no chance you can trade him. He's
Yeah,
coming off
yeah,
of a spleen injury, and there's
right.
length on the contract. Like, it's just
Yeah,
what are you getting back? I think you gave up a third or a fourth to acquire him.
yeah, he'll be
So
back.
yeah,
So I think I
he's
just named
back.
8 forwards who are good players.
Yeah,
So that's who's going to be here for sure.
yeah. I would actually say I think Lawrence is going to be here too. I just don't see
I do too.
I don't see a scenario where they're going to
I
be
will say
like,
I'm disappointed in his year.
sure,
I
but
wanted him to take a step, develop a physical edge, develop an offensive edge. He's just kind of tall vanilla.
yeah, took a horrible penalty last night too, just like
Yeah.
aggressively bad. I'm glad you mentioned Nick Roy though, as he's here. I have him on the list. Here's my proposition to you.
Okay.
For me, out of all the guys that have a contract coming up,
Yep.
Scott Laughton is the most important to retain. I would say there's a potential of you getting a pick and a good one for him, or a young player, and getting back some of what you lost in the trade in order to acquire him. But to me, the personality type absolutely fits the market. I'm offering him a letter, and I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility, considering the stuff that we've talked about with Austin Matthews and the lack of certainty there, that someday that guy could be your team's captain. Like, that's the type of makeup that I think you have with the guy. To me, if I'm the Leafs, I'm actually tendering him a contract that is respectable. I'm not trying to get him to be lowballed. I'm going, we value you. We want you here. But if
Yeah.
you do that, I think you have to shop Nick Roy, because the idea that you're going to keep this guy and he's cemented into this fourth line role where he has the potential to be only playing, 9 minutes a night sometimes,
Yeah.
is not going to be appealing to him. And that the only path forward in terms of being able to keep him is saying, you're actually the third line center. And as much as people have liked Roy for stretches, to me, it actually kind of comes down to you picking which one of these guys is your third line center, rather than trying to live in a reality where you're having all four of those guys down the middle.
Yeah, I think you're making a compelling case there. I'm torn on the. I just like Nick Watt. First off, you've got a team that has no defensive players, no one with a conscience. Maybe like Lawton has some conscience. Matthews has some. Like you
Hasn't been
don't have
showing
a
up as much lately, I got to say.
No, it's not. But yeah, like Nick was one of the guys who does, and he's got hands, and he competes, and he's big. He is slow,
Mhm.
which you want to get faster, but I don't know that you get better by moving off of off good players. He's 28 years old. Yeah, I would hear it. I think you definitely have to know what kind of offers you were getting on both guys, and then I think either one of these guys needs a different coach. Neither one
Yeah,
of them get any opportunity, and they're both. It's baffling to me. It's like these are the guys you would think Berube would love. These guys,
I
the
know.
defensive conscience, big care, compete, can make plays, like a great mix of, and he just doesn't want to put them on the ice.
There
So
was a shift last night that Wah had where he was just completely controlling the play. And it was one of the only times in the game where the Leafs had true sustained pressure. And it's like he's using his big body. He's getting into the middle of the ice. They couldn't really get the puck off of him. He's moving around with some level of speed. And I'm with you. I actually really like Wah, and I really like Lawton. This isn't really a case of
Don't want the guy.
Yeah, it just to me, it's more like you're picking one guy. The case against Lawton is again, he's I think 3 years older than Nick Waugh. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
31 and Benoit's 28. Or sorry, I keep saying Benoit because they're both French. That's so anti-French of me. Waugh is 28 years old, and he's also under contract for the other season. And if you're re-signing Lawton, you're giving him more than $3 million, and so you're banking on. Like I could see people pushing back and going, "Hey, aren't you being a little too Brian Burke here with the truculence and the intangibles over
Yeah.
what you have in terms of control and age?" And I would say, yeah, there's a case to be made with that. But one of the things about this team that I really despise is they have too many of the same personality. So when you say like they've got too many of the same guys when it comes to the four wingers that you outlined,
Yeah.
the small undersized guys who don't play D, I would say that it's the same thing with if you're going to have Matthews, Waugh, and Tavares, which one of those guys is talking on the bench? And
Mhm.
like, I know I'm definitely more of an intangibles guy, but on this team in particular and where they're at in terms of the crossroads with the hockey team, and I do hear a guy like Morgan Riley in the postgame yesterday saying that they're not playing with enough desperation, and it almost feels hollow at this point because they've been saying that for so long and you've heard it so many times. But I like the idea of if you're going to have Nylander and you're going to have Matthews and you're trying to retool, making sure that you have guys that are going to be played regularly who have a pulse and who get it and who are drivers of emotional equity. And that is Scott Laughton to me more than it is Nick Waugh. And so
Yeah.
on balance, it makes more sense. But if you're telling me that Waugh could get more in a trade because of that salary and because of all the things that you outlined than Scott Laughton could as an unrestricted free agent, I would be going, well, I only need one of these guys. I can get more pieces back for Waugh, and I actually do covet the Laughton skill set or the emotional skill set a little bit more
Yeah.
given the remainder of the team, and that's my case for Laughton.
Yeah, there's value in that. Just to overstate an example,
Mhm.
if you put my son's U10 select hockey team in the NHL, if all of them had the most character and the most care and conversation and compete and all those things, it doesn't matter.
Of
It
course.
doesn't matter. You have to be good enough first. So until we get to can care about intangibles, you have to have enough talent on the team. And so, yes, I agree with you that the Leafs badly lack these sort of guys, but you've been here with me while they've been trying to tape these guys to the side of the foundation
Mhm.
that is the current Leafs team. It's Ryan O'Reilly's coming in to
Yep.
save the day or whoever it is next. And they just, they're not important enough guys. I wish Ryan O'Reilly had stayed,
Mhm.
that sort of guy. Lawton can be that guy right now if you used him, and you could use him on your second line or third line, and maybe he'd be more important. So I do agree with you that this is something that the Leafs need, and if it's dead even, value the guy that's going to give you a little bit more of that sort of stuff. I think you can make the case that you're right here, that they are kind of even, and you might be able to get more for Juan. Lawton does have that skill set. I also think there's a small chance that Lawton looks around that room and goes, I don't want to have to be the sled dog pulling this sled through the 10 feet of powder,
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's the biggest part of the Lawton equation is if you think that he's a dog and you think that he really cares and he's
Yeah,
surrounded by guys and going, God, I got to lead it every night with Troy Stetcher.
right.
I'm
Me and
exhausted by this.
me and Stetcher at the front of the pack plowing this field. It's
Correct. So
so
I hear you. My third case is you actually try to keep both and you move Tavares to the wing next year.
yeah, totally. I'm in because you know what, Lawton can play both anyway. So
Yep.
you got a couple of guys with some versatility. I think the most impressive thing is like Lawton's skating still there.
Yep.
So if he's physical and he's killing penalties and he can score you 10 to 15 while, bringing some pace in that, he's a useful guy. You worry about paying too much for it, but you hate to see those guys go from here where they've just been badly and we've missed them around here.
Well, and I will say too, like as much as I am enamored by Lawton's game, and I really do feel as though there's this really strong case to re-sign him, I am doing this without knowing really the numbers. Because like at least with McMahon, it's sort of been floated out there that, hey, he's going to want to get paid. This is his only contract. The market's going to really value him in a depressed year. But I would think kind of the same thing for Scott Laughton. And I don't know, there's just kind of some numbers that you could throw at me with Scott Laughton, and I would go, Yeah, it's not impossible to me that he gets $4.5–5 million from a team because they covet. Like, I know that sounds incredibly steep,
Yeah.
but if you're talking about a short-term deal for
Yeah.
a guy with those kind of skills in a market where, man, go look at the free agents next year. That's one of the toughest things for the Leafs is like, you got the cap space again. What are you going to do with it? You going to go after Artemi Panarin? I don't think so. I don't think that's what
The
this.
Islanders just traded for Andre Palat, who is Lawton, who makes $6 million.
Yeah. So
You know?
yeah, I just don't think that those things are out the realm of possibility. But there's certainly a number that you could pay Lawton where, yeah, you just look at that after they sign the deal, and I'm like, you got to resign, you got to resign. And then he's getting the contract, and I'm going, whoo.
Not for that.
All right, that was a little much. Last one, one of the goalies.
One of the goalies. The problem is, the old thing, and I know you've heard it a million times, the NFL line, like if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. Who's the one for the Leafs?
I'm trying not to
Who's the one?
overreact from this recent stretch of play from Wool. And
So Wool's the one?
no, I'm saying, like, I think he's clearly the most bankable long-term guy that you would bet on. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, over this stretch where they've been bad and he has been bad, I'm trying not to overreact to this exact thing. Also, Stolar's, did you see his quote?
No.
Okay, let me pull it up here quickly before you go. I hated it. Like, so Wool gave the quote that I hated this week before the Marner game, where he's like, I hope that everyone shows him respect because it's a respectful game. And I went, I hate that. I really wish you just didn't say anything at all. But Stolar's had one that I liked even less. So around why he didn't go to the AHL. The best way to get back into play is in the NHL. You have to go back and play against the best players in the world and try to get back up to speed. Obviously, the American League is not the AHL. I just felt that getting back into here and being competitive environment with the boys would be the best thing for me. End quote.
You don't get to pick.
Best thing for me is not what you want to hear from the goalie in a huge stretch of play against a huge opponent.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, best thing for the team would have been for you to get your feet under you in some hockey games.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, they shoot it pretty good in the American League. A lot of guys go down there and don't exactly light it up. So
didn't like that.
Here's my one of the goalies thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as sold as everyone that Hildeby's an NHL guy.
Oh, okay.
Like I don't know.
Yeah.
That he's an NHL. I think he's definitely not an NHL starter. That's a really elite string of words. NHL starter. Like, I don't know, there's probably 20 of those in the league. You say, that's a guy who can play 50 a night in the NHL. So I don't think he's that. And his sample size, he's been great this year. He's been awesome. So awesome. But it's goaltending is so weird. Mm-hmm. Next year, he could be awful. And the year before, I didn't think his form was very good, whatever. We have Valley on our show to start the year, and he was like, Bourne, I'm not seeing it. Everything's gone great from this year. He's brimming with confidence. He looks great, but you have a guy who's full of value. Now it's a huge risk because goaltending is crazy. You trade him and all of a sudden he's fantastic for a decade for the Flyers. It looks bad, but like to my untrained goalie eye, who has watched a lot of hockey though, I'm not sure about Hildy.
I think that's fine. Like that's an okay position to take. For me, I do think Tree Living got all this credit for the original Stolar signing because it was for a song. And you looked at it and went, man, this guy was one of the most valuable players based on the money that he got. The re-signing him when they did was way too quick. That if I was looking at this going, hey, what would take the contracts out of it if he was a free agent and they hadn't tendered him that deal this offseason? I don't think anyone would be talking about bringing him back. Obviously, he's been hurt, but people would look at it and go, well, it's a very clear path forward that you're keeping Wool and you've got Hildeby and you're not even trying to re-sign. Like Hildeby might not be a starter, but he's a good enough serviceable backup that has shown enough to be the guy. And so to me, that answers your question, which is you're probably not trading him ahead of the deadline for much. But if you can, I'm definitely offering Stolars to teams. Like if somebody comes and says, we'll give you something and you can get off the money and you can move forward and you don't have to deal with that headache in the offseason, I'm good with it, even though I like Stolars. I think he's a good player. But where they're at as a team, I don't think that you can have the luxury of having three goaltenders and having to make that decision in the offseason. Anyway, that's it.
He was their guy. Playoffs last year, man.
Yeah, but like you said, goalies are weird and things move quickly. Like it is what it is. Justin Bourne, you can listen to him later today on Real Kipper and Bourne. Thanks for making time, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, pal.
See you, buddy. Before I take the break quickly, I'm just going to say this. Yesterday, the Leafs are 6-on-5, and they're missing William Nylander for sure, but you're looking at who's out there, and it's Max Domi. They're throwing Matthias Michelli out there. This team just doesn't have enough talent. They got to find a way. This offseason, they're going to have to make other trades to acquire more talent. And right now, you don't have anything in the cupboards. So you have to stock, to me, as much as you possibly can with these guys. Like I said, it sounds fantasy game stuff where I'm doing all these names that you would trade. But that's the way they're going to be able to build this. There's going to be maybe a little bit of free agency for sure. But they're going to have to trade in order to acquire the actual talent that they need to supplement those top players if they are doing a retool. And to me, there's only one path forward there, and that's accumulating as many assets as you can. Subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars, reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis. And I want to talk about the dumbest thing that I think I've seen in my lifetime. All right, I'm going to be quick here because the take is not overly interesting. So Bill Belichick won 6 Super Bowls as a head coach and 2 as an assistant. He won 35 playoff games, 17 division titles, 333 regular season victories. He is unquestionably the greatest coach in any sport during my lifetime. And he certainly has a very, very strong case for the greatest football coach who's ever lived. And yeah, he's got some controversy. Spygate, Deflategate was pretty much thrown out as kind of a nothing burger. He's not overly popular right now with what's happened at UNC, and the league kind of chased him, and he's lost the narrative battle with Tom Brady. But he did not get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a first ballot entry. Didn't get 40 of 50 votes needed. So a minimum of 11 people didn't vote for Bill Belichick. I have yet to see anyone come out and publicly state that they did not vote for him. So you're going to see a lot of liars who lie and a lot of covering up from people who should, frankly, be unbelievably embarrassed at this point. What I think about this, though, is 2 quick things. One, these guys screwed up so badly that they're going to now change the way that they do things here. I saw Mike Sando put out a tweet about like the process and how it's a rebuke of the system, not of the guy. And I go, not too bad, too late. Some of you guys are out, period. Some of you guys need to be replaced. And I'm not talking about just like other writers. They're going to have to really look at what happened here and how they can fix it to bring back credibility to the Hall. Because I don't think anybody cares about Hall of Fames as much anymore. It doesn't seem to be a modern debate as much as it used to be. We're way more willing to put people in for the vibes more than I think it used to be. But this is an embarrassment. And again, what I really feel bad for is this is the same thing with the Pro Bowl stuff with Shedeur Sanders, except for like to a hugely different degree. If you're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, this makes not you look like a joke. That's too strong, but it diminishes the value of a thing that you worked your entire life for by not putting him in. So what these voters have done is whoever decided that they were going to try to take a shot at Bill Belichick took a shot at the entire league and everybody who's in the Hall of Fame. And that to me is unacceptable, and that's why I'm sorry. You're going to have a change now. And I don't know if the change will be for a better. Might make it worse. But can't have this, can't have that. And everybody who's pissed off, from Patrick Mahomes, LeBron, to J.J. Watt, to everybody else that I saw opine on this thing, is in the right on this one. We'll take a quick break. So I'm very much looking forward to watching a team I actually like tonight, a team that does play for each other, that does have chemistry, that is exceeding expectations, that has fun, has a real joy to them when they play, and that's the Toronto Raptors. Huge game tonight against the New York Knicks. They've lost 10 straight to the Knicks. 10. Yeah, that goes back to when the Raptors were basically stripping this thing down. But either way, they've had the Raptors number, and so tonight is going to be a really big test. I know the Oklahoma City game was brilliant. I did get a chance to go back and watch the recording. Super impressive victory. I'm really impressed with the way Quickly's playing right now, the way that, again, they move the ball. They share it. They play connected. It's a really fun team. Um, and I had a chance to catch up with Charlie Villanueva, and I'm going to have some thoughts coming out of this about, yeah, I know we're just really focused on the deadline, but that's because it's 4 games away. I think the guys were telling me before the show today. 4 games away for the Raptors. Tonight, a big one. But they've kind of got this little bit of a conundrum heading into it, which is how much do you mess with the chemistry versus how much urgency do you feel you need to add talent to a team that deserves an addition at the deadline? That's coming up, but here's Charlie Villanueva. Very pleased to be joined by Charlie Villanueva, of course, '04 national champion, former Toronto Raptor, 11 years in the league, and co-host of To The Baha with Raymond Felton and Theo Pinson, which is excellent. Although I got to admit, it is hard for me sometimes not to call it the Baha Boys.
Yeah, the Baja Boys. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. I like how that sounds.
Yeah, like whenever I've seen the name, I'm always like the Baja Boys. Don't say that, right? Just
You
get it
gave us
out.
an idea for new merch. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'll only take like what,
I'll give
15,
you some
20%?
royalties.
Yeah.
I'll give you some royalties.
Yeah. That's only right. That's only fair. I gotta say, man, you guys have a great vibe on the pod. Like
Yeah.
I think in this game, what you really want to have is for it to feel like a hang. And that's what I love about you guys is that it's like super comfortable. You guys definitely shoot from the hip. Like you specifically, like you are the most fearless on the pod, by far out of the 3 guys. But yeah, dude, I think like that takes a long time. But I guess those relationships that you guys have, you were just able to translate just hanging with your buddies into a podcast pretty seamlessly.
Yeah, I mean, well, I never thought that, podcasting was going to be a thing for me,
Mhm.
life after basketball. Obviously I went down the path of entrepreneurship and real estate and all that. And then I found my love in podcasting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that podcasting would be so much fun. But one thing about me and us is that we're authentic, right? We're authentic.
Mhm.
And like you said, we shoot from the hip. I've had played with Ray, obviously, but I've known Ray Fountain forever. We played against
Mhm.
each other in college. And I've known him for quite some time, even though uh we played our last 2 years together here in Dallas. Well, at least for me, my last 2 years in Dallas. I played with Ray Fountain and Theo.
Mhm.
I met Theo, doing an interview, doing a podcast with him on his show, Run Your Race. And we hit it off then, and then those guys had a podcast going and they told me about it. They wanted me to join the team, and it was a no-brainer for me. It's fun. It's
Mhm.
organic, it's not like I have to study for it. I'm speaking, from what I experienced, my
Yeah.
experiences and my perspective on the game. So it's pretty cool. It's a cool vibe for sure.
No, it really is. Like I said, you can tell that it's authentic, that you guys just like honestly, man, when player pods first started coming out, a few of them anyways, like I'm not gonna throw a ton of shade, but
Yeah.
some were like overly produced, especially guys who were still in the
Yeah.
league and were trying to
Yeah.
do this stuff. And I went, listen, I want your perspective and I want your storytelling for sure, but I don't want to have it where it like feels like it's very PR and
Yeah.
that you're worried about where the story's going to go. Like if you're afraid of what's going to happen with a clip, I think that your pod's going to suck. And
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I laugh my ass off a lot of times when I see your guys' stuff because it really is like guys waiting, guys laughing, and then all of a sudden it's just, all right, you know what? I'm just going to say it. And I love that energy. That's a great energy to have on a podcast. And you're right though, the studying part, because right now you've got it where the storytelling, and you went viral for your story with Kyle Singler, like what is that, like
Yeah.
a week ago?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
storytelling part is obviously very fun, but the studying, you start to realize you're like, oh man, I only got so many stories. Now I'm gonna have to study up and add to the repertoire. That's when we'll see, like, yeah. But
Yeah.
if you got the love, I think that you'll keep doing it, man. You definitely have something. Like you got
Well,
something there.
well, I appreciate that. I mean, that's the message we kind of try to portray is us being, honest, us just telling our real life stories,
Hmm.
because there's a lot of things that the fans, your average, uh, fan or viewer would not know, right? Or
Hmm.
things that were kept under wraps and things like that. The Kyle Singler story is a perfect indication. Some people are
Hmm.
scared to say that story, and I will probably, I wouldn't say that if I was an active player. I probably
Yeah,
not a
of
story I'm
course.
going to tell, but I'm not active no more. I've been 10 years
Yeah.
removed from the league, so now it's no holds bar, man. I'm telling it all.
Yeah. Dude, that's crazy. 10 years. That's like
Yeah, I know it
goes.
sounds crazy. Even me saying that, I've
I
been 10
know.
moved from the league, man. But it's crazy.
Yeah,
right?
like I remember you as a Raptor. I remember your draft night. I even remember you with the Mavericks. And obviously Milwaukee. But man, God, I just you even saying that. Like obviously before this interview, I was looking at your basketball reference page, ripping through a couple of your teams, thinking about some
Yeah,
stuff. But
yeah.
it didn't even dawn on me when I was looking at that page that yeah, you retired 10 years ago. God, that makes
Hey,
me feel old. I
but yeah,
hate that.
I was 31 years old. Yeah, I came into the league
Yeah,
when I was 20, retired at 31. Obviously, it wasn't my choice to retire at 31
yeah,
because it was up to me. I played until I'm 40.
yeah.
But, the basketball doors, the basketball gods told me it was over with. So,
Hmm.
at 31, man, it's still a young age, but I was able to adapt and focus on life after basketball.
Honestly, man, that's like pretty commendable. I hadn't even really thought about this, but when you're talking about getting into real estate and getting into podcasts and entrepreneur stuff, like to make that pivot when you were 31 years old, like that's still young, man. You're
Super,
not,
yeah.
yeah, like in order for you to try to figure out the next phase of your life in that spot, that had to be somewhat intimidating.
It was. I've been blessed to have, good parents and my brother kind of
Yeah.
took me under the wing. Once I retired, I really didn't know what direction I was going to go to. And that's kind of the message that I kind of give to these youngsters is because no one ever prepares for the end, right? But
Hmm.
we all know it's coming, right? We all know, you can't play this forever. So why not prepare for the end, like as soon as you get in? To
Hmm.
the league, right? So that's one of the things that I would say I would regret is that I didn't get prepared, you know, after the fact, which it took me about a year and a half to kind of figure out what that path was. And lo and behold, there was real estate. I took the path of real estate development, and it went from it started small with the fixing and flipping, and then it
Hmm.
went to construction, building new constructions, and to me that I love real estate. So it took a while for me to transition into that, but I was able to figure it out. And then once you get that team in place, and that was the hard part is figuring out the team in place, the contractor, the project managers, and all this and all that, um, and finding the specific trades and whatnot. That was the hard part for me. But once I was able to figure that out, it was smooth sailing. And I've also transitioned into the sports agency space as well.
Hmm.
Partner up with Vermont Session on time agency, um, and that's been fun and eventful, being in that space now that I'm in the agency space, as a partner with the agency.
So, as you're saying this stuff too, I'm thinking when you're a younger player, there's always going to be vets. And like you just said, that you're trying to impart down to young guys now about preparing for what's next before it arrives.
Yep.
But man, when you're 22 years old in the NBA, you're making real money.
Yep.
Somebody coming up to you and being like, hey, think about the
Yeah.
future. You're like,
Yeah.
shut up.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's tough. No, it's tough,
yeah,
but I think it hits different when it comes from a player that's already been through it, right?
sure.
And the statistics are numbers don't lie. That most athletes, there was a number that stuck with me for my entire, and I hope these numbers has changed nowadays, but
Mhm,
that 80% of athletes go broke after 5 years removed from the league. And I always wanted to be that 20% where,
mhm,
maybe we'll be successful and able to, because we make a large amount of money in a small period of time. So how do I stretch that, right? How do I make this last forever? And, I'm a living testament of that. I'm 10 years removed and live a pretty comfortable life. I'm fortunate enough to make some right decisions and able to live a pretty comfortable life. But, these players get to see that, right? They,
mhm,
and I can walk them through what that looks like, what certain things look like. So, um, that's one of the things is for me to spread the knowledge, spread the
mhm.
knowledge, and hopefully these kids will listen because some of these kids will listen. But it's hard. You're right. Some of these guys the money now. These kids are making 2 or 300 million. They ain't not trying to hear none of that, right? So, um, but some of them do. So my
Yeah.
goal is if I can change one kid's life and get to one person, then I did my job.
Honestly, man, I think that that's probably the right approach because I think it's kind of the same way with media, where I'm at in my career, I still try to be a mentor to younger people as well. And you have to be willing to accept that you're not going to get through to everybody. Like
Yep.
some guys you're going to try to give the message to, and they're just not going to get it. And they think they're going to get it.
Yep.
And they just, yeah, not to say like you give up on somebody, but you can't get bogged down in, hey, one guy didn't get it, so that you can't just try to impart the knowledge on the next guy, right? Or take
Yep.
away from somebody else. I'm just
Yep.
curious if you think like the NBA is actually doing a better job now of helping facilitate younger players into their into their next piece of their future, because it is one thing for like again a vet to take you aside and start talking to you about this. Like right now, the Raptors have Garrett Temple, and he seems to be like honestly a huge piece of this Raptors team just from a veteran standpoint. But if you're thinking about like the modern NBA, vets are
Or
not like,
non-existent. Yeah.
yeah, dude, the league's
Yeah.
getting younger and
Yeah.
younger and younger. Like you said it, you were out by 31. So I don't know if that piece is going to be there to the same degree with every single team. You get some that are rebuilds that are hoping to stock up on as much young guys as they possibly can. Like, man, look at OKC. I know they won the title, but it's like Alex Caruso is their vet,
Yeah.
and he's, I think, 30 or 31 years old. Same
Young.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it's like you kind of do need a little bit of guidance, I would think, from the league if you're going to get younger and younger and not have that same wealth of experience that you can lean on as a player.
Yeah. That's one thing that I always talk about on the pod is that you need leadership. You need vets, right? You need the guys that have been, been through it, that have gone through it, and those are very tremendous pieces. I mean, Garrett Temple in Toronto is a great example. DeAndre Jordan in New Orleans is
Mhm.
another example. You gotta have these vets because the league is getting younger and younger, and and not only that, but then you're getting these kids that are coming from colleges where, NIL, where they made millions and millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, you
True.
know. So, it's so they're coming into the league with a different mentality. So having guys that have been there, done that, was helpful. For me, having a guy like Derek Martin or Eric Williams, guys who I talk to this day when I played in Toronto when I came into the league, were
Mhm.
guys that kind of took me under the wing, and I've learned so much from those guys that things that I still carry to this day. So having vets is important.
Yeah. Honestly, though, the sad part about it is some guys will get it in the moment, but a lot of times it's going to be like, oh, damn, 10 years later, that guy was right.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that.
exactly right. And then you got the stories where the guys made millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and now it's broke,
Mhm.
right? So you got to know that this is the most money you're gonna make in a small amount of time. So you gotta stress this for the rest of your life, and that's just the message that I try to portray to these kids.
Yeah, honestly, it's probably even harder as you're mentioning it. I hadn't even really thought about it, but just like the NIL money in terms of you entering the league, where it's
Yeah,
like you're already a millionaire, you already have stuff.
you already
So
have
now
it.
it's like guys who are vets who maybe weren't making max salaries trying to tell you about, hey, ways to operate your money. It's even a harder dynamic to have with a younger player where they're like, I'm not even starving for this next
Yeah,
deal or like this money. Like I already got money. Like,
yeah,
I already got things. So one of the first things I'm honestly almost even like reluctant to bring this up because it's becoming so tired here as a topic. But one of the first clips that I saw from your show that went viral was you defending the city of Toronto.
yeah,
And yeah, but it's weird, man, because there are a lot of guys like yourself who played here and really did enjoy their time. But you've kind of always been this dude who is consistent about how much you love Toronto, and you were only here for a year. It always felt like more than that because
it's
I
actually
think,
less. 6 months,
yeah,
to be
yeah,
honest.
exactly. So
Yeah,
it's like, but even when I think about it, it's like I think that part of the reason why you're such a known Raptor, or like not just the success that you had here, but that because people look down on you in the draft, right? Like when you got picked to Toronto and it was like, oh, this guy, this pick, who was it? Stephen A. I can't even remember who the
even
hell it
then, yeah,
was.
even then, yeah.
Yeah, so Stephen A., who was like, this is a terrible draft pick. I can't believe this thing happened. Toronto is one of the number one places in the NBA where it's like if you get doubted, but then you succeed, the fans embrace you to a completely different level because they also feel that measure of doubt, right? So the fact that you had it, you came in, you had success, there's definitely more of a kinship there between you and the market. But it is weird to see, like, you be on your pod and you get impressed by guys being like, no, you didn't really like it. You didn't really like it. You're like, no, man, I really did love it and I enjoyed the city. And I'm curious why you think that is. Is it just because this is more guys who didn't play there? Because the perception, especially from the generations before, I can't really speak to the guys right now, still does have that like there's no way that you could have possibly loved Toronto. It feels like it's either you got it or you completely don't even understand it to like the smallest degree.
Yeah, for me though, I have a totally different perspective and experience with Toronto because I got drafted there.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know or known any other team or known the process. So to me, because I see a lot of guys complaining about the customs thing, you got to get, the travel, it just makes it a little bit extra steps you got to take with the
Mm-hmm.
traveling and whatnot. So, like for me, I'm like, no, that's normal. That's all I
Yeah.
knew when I first
Yeah.
came in.
Fair.
So to me, it's like, and then the way the city embraced me, like we all know like the negative things. Like I still talk about it to this day. When I got drafted to Toronto, I got on the plane the next day to go to the city, and on the front papers is a picture of me saying, did Toronto make a wrong decision?
Mm.
And then so that's how I was going into the city, is like with already having doubt or haters, so to speak. But the city was just like, no, we gonna welcome this kid. So the way they embraced me, and then I was pretty active in the community work as well in Toronto. That's kind of a way to win the city, right? Is to give back. And I was able to create a foundation. I did a lot of work with alopecia, with
Mm-hmm.
kids who dealt with alopecia and whatnot, and I loved it. I loved every bit and every second of me being in Toronto. We didn't have a good year, but to me, living in Toronto was amazing. To me, it was very similar to New York, and I'm from New York. But to me, it's a lot safer and a lot cleaner than New York. Uh, um, but Toronto was amazing. I mean, and not only that, but I also ended up getting having a son who's from Toronto. So Toronto's been nothing but amazing to me, and it's sad that I was only there for 6 months because I was hurt. I was hurt when I tell you when they traded me uh, to Milwaukee, and Milwaukee ended up working out. Milwaukee's a great city or whatnot, but it was just the way on how it happened. I was so hurt that I left that city that I truly loved.
Yeah, man. But the thing is, again, I think that is part of the reason that you are remembered here is because that's the thing with the fans is like you just give them a little bit of something
Yeah.
and they love you forever, right? Like, so you performed, but also you enjoyed your time here and you always spoke about your time here with glowing stuff. And like, I even remember, God, again, so long ago, but 2016, the All-Star game. Like I
Yep.
was there, I was covering it. I was actually even after at that same after party you were at because I remember seeing you there. Marshawn Lynch, runner, my buddy. This quick funny story. We're at that party where Shaq DJ'd at the
Yep. Yep.
2016 All
Yep.
Star
Yep.
game.
Massive, massive venue. Yep.
Huge venue. Like you got lost in that thing.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
walking around it for like a half hour being like, where the hell are we? And also like I'm so out of place. Like I'm a little 5'10" white guy like about the NBA All-Star party. And it's like I think it was Maxim that threw it. So it's
Yeah.
like
Max.
beautiful
Yep.
women
Yep.
everywhere,
Massive.
tall NBA players everywhere. And my buddy looks at me, he's like, hey, there's Marshawn Lynch. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm a big Seahawks fan. And
Yep.
he's like, you should go up to him. And I was like, are you out of your mind? Like, I'm not walking up to Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you're a coward. You got to go up and say something. I was like, no, absolutely not. So I look at him and he starts walking over to Marshawn Lynch and he took his camera out, like his phone, and takes a picture of him, but he doesn't know that his flash is on.
Oh wow! So you got
So the
caught.
dude, the camera flashes in the dark bar right near that little front bar that was there where Marshawn's standing.
Yeah.
And Marshawn just walks right up to him. He's like, you got to get out of here is the nice, polite way to say it. And
Yeah.
he's like, yes, yes, Mr.
Yeah, I
Lynch.
don't think certain guys don't like being photographed
No, man, it was an
at a venue.
insane,
Right?
it was an insane decision, but I've never seen anybody so scared. But it was great because he actually did have this hilarious picture of Marshawn Lynch for the longest time, looking just
Yeah.
like the
Just
most
looking
pissed
at him
off
crazy.
human who ever lived. But I was gonna say that the reason why I remember that was when you were there, fans embracing you, and a lot of people being around you, and a lot of people being stoked that you were there in a way that was like, okay, like this is the NBA All-Star game. And you're getting like a real reception from people. I was like, damn, this really resonates. Like this city still loves this guy.
Yeah, it's just the people was just amazing, and I was real and authentic with them. Always show them love,
Mhm.
and there was an organic relationship there, and I continue even though 2016 I was playing for Dallas at that time.
Yep.
It was an All-Star in Toronto. I'm not gonna miss it. I'm gonna be part of it. I'm gonna be involved somehow, some way. So Toronto was like my first love. As far as NBA because they gave me the opportunity, and I'm always gonna be loyal and always gonna honor that because there's no matter how I was traded or how I was done, at the end of the day, Toronto drafted me and they gave me my first they were my first opportunity to play in the NBA, and they was the one team that believed in me and gave me a shot. So I'm always gonna carry that, and I'm always gonna be in debt to the city of Toronto for the rest of my life.
That All-Star game had to be the coldest you've ever been your whole life, though, right?
Super cold. It was brutal. It was so brutal. But hey, it was
Yeah.
some good nights now. I can't complain.
It was a great night, but I will say that, like, living here, that was the weirdest. That's the most embarrassed I've ever been of Toronto. Like, I was like, "Are you serious, weather? That you're gonna do this?"
Yeah, I know Mother Nature could have treated us a little bit better, but I
Yeah,
mean, it's Toronto. I mean, it's Canada, so you
yeah,
know
it
what
is.
you're gonna get.
Welcome, but yeah, my God, that was like stand outside for 2 seconds and you're
Yeah,
furious.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you're just
Like
like,
it
please.
hurts. Like it
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah.
It
Hurt to
hurts.
breathe,
It's
hurt your
painful.
face, hurt everything. Awful.
Yeah.
So, to that point though, about, being overlooked a little, like being doubted in the draft, right? Scotty Barnes got that too here in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like he got drafted, and a lot of people, myself included, by the way, thought, how are you
Yeah.
going to pass on Jalen Suggs? Look at
Yeah.
the tournament that Suggs just had. Like Scotty Barnes, far more of an unknown. And he has come here now. And I actually think that he is starting this season really to feel like he was loved. Obviously, he won Rookie of the Year. But now there does seem to be more of a connection between him and the city. Now they're starting to feel a little bit of success. I think that he's starting to like really get to at
Mhm.
least experience what it's like in a city that loves basketball this way and loves their team this way when you're at the head of the snake of something that is quite like this. But I got to admit, man, I always thought like he was going to be a good player. Obviously, he wins Rookie of the Year. You're thinking, hey, the ceiling can be fairly high. But the
Yep.
year that he's put on so far, I think has surprised even his biggest fans in terms of the leap, specifically defensively. I'm curious what you think about his game.
No, I think he gives me like a Scottie Pippen type of vibe kind of player where he can play on the both ends. He's obviously a tremendous gifted offensive player, but he takes the challenge on the defensive end. He's a dog. Let's call it what it is. And he's been embraced by the city, and to me, it's like you gotta stay in Toronto, like right, like if you're getting all this love from the people, and you're getting better every year. It seems like so. Why not? Make it one of those things where you want to be there for your rest of your career, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, he's a great player. They're having great success. I don't think people expected much from the Raptors, but they're playing well. They're playing
Yeah.
well.
No, they're playing really well. And that brings me to the last one. You've been super generous with the time, which is like they have a real chemistry thing going on right now where the team is vibing well. They've got a great mix of players. They've been down a couple of guys with injuries for a lot of the season. Like they haven't had their center Jakob Pertl for basically the majority of the year at this point.
Yep. Barrett missed some time.
Yeah, so they're ahead of this deadline, right? And they're one of these rumored teams where everybody's talking about them like, hey, the Raptors, are they going to add? Are they going to add? Because yeah, they're third in the East right now. People are feeling like, hey, maybe they got to make a splashy move. But with the chemistry the team has, and like speaking about, veteran impacts, I watched Garrett Temple talk about this. I think it was today on one of our shows called The Raptor Show, about how you have to be careful when it comes to making a deal when you have chemistry like this and when you have momentum like that, when it comes to adding a star piece. And I'm curious, how you experience that through your career. The feeling of like, man, we got something going, but that it's almost this curse that as soon as you start to build something really successful, the first move is that people are going like, all right, now what's next and how are we going to add to this group and who are we going to be removing from this team?
So yeah, that's what sometimes you have to be very careful, and I would agree with Garrett Temple on that because chemistry is something very sensitive, and you can't teach chemistry. It's something that has to organically happen, right? So even though you might want to bring in a better name, a better player, but not mean that it's going to work, right? So Toronto got something good right now. Like you said, they're third in the East. Um, for me, I kind of want to see how it plays out, and then, because health has been an issue with them as well. So kind of let it play it out. And, it's working right now. I mean, the fact that they're third in the East is pretty big. It's a tribute to what the coach and those guys have been doing. But chemistry, you got to be careful with that because you can mess it up and bring in the wrong piece and letting go of a certain piece. So I kind of want to see it play out, see how they do for the rest of the year, and then address whatever concern on the off season. But kind of let it play it out and see where it goes.
I'm the same way. What I really want to see is what they look like in the playoffs. Like if they add another big man to get some depth, because like they really are undersized.
Yep.
So a big man at the deadline is probably something all right for them. But I really want to see how it shakes out when you're playing, 48 minutes of hyper intense basketball, half court basketball. See how these guys respond to it, and then like try to go into an off season where you say, "Hey, at least now we saw it over the course of a full year. We
Yep.
saw it
Correct.
over the course of a playoff run. Now let's make the adjustments before we do something too soon that's too splashy." And especially like to the point about Barnes, like he really feels like he's taken over this team, and Brandon Ingram has been a great ad with them. But I was,
Tremendous.
but I was worried when they got Ingram that it was like, oh man, is it going to turn into two teams? Like, is it going to be the Ingram possessions and the Scotty possessions? It hasn't been that way. It's been great between the two guys. But if you're bringing in a third dude who all of a sudden changes just the chemistry of the team, but also like the hierarchy of, all right, well, is this guy going to have to get his and what's he going to have to try to prove in Toronto? I don't know if I'm doing that in season. And I feel like that's a lot harder to do when you're not doing it in a training camp when guys are all coming at the same time with like a shared goal.
Yeah. The other thing you have to consider too, the East is so wide open,
I know.
right? You got Detroit playing well, obviously. I mean, the second best team in the league. But outside of that, I mean, it's wide open. So and I still think Detroit's beatable. It's not like a solidified top team. So, Toronto just has to keep doing what they're doing, but they got to health. Health is the most important part, and the health at the end of the day is what gets a team over the hump, right? If they're more of a capable team, they have all the right pieces. But like you said, I would look at it at the end, let them go through the playoff run, and then take a look at it then, and see where it goes because we don't know. I mean, I know for sure Toronto was counted out in the beginning of the season, right? They wasn't really thinking they're going to be, a top three team in the East, but they're playing well. They're playing tremendously well. So let's kind of see how it looks.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited about it. Hey, man, honestly, congrats on all the successes.
Thank you,
The
man.
podcast is great. I'm glad that you found another thing that you love, and I appreciate you making time for me today, man. This was
Yeah,
awesome.
no problem, man. Thank you for having me, and appreciate it.
Great chat with Charlie. And the thought coming out of it, and this was inspired by the Raptor show yesterday when they spoke to Garrett Temple. And he spoke about it because, like, he's in that locker room and he's their vet, he's their leader, he has the emotional pulse of the room as well as anybody does. And he articulated extremely well that ahead of a deadline, you have to be cautious of messing with the team's chemistry. And especially when it's like what the Raptors have right now, a group of younger players for the most part who are really finding themselves and overshooting expectation. Yes, is there an element of the league is flat? Totally. Who cares? Raptors look good. And there is a vibe to them. There is a joy that this group is playing with right now, and there is a connectivity in terms of the way that they share the ball and the way that they play with one another without one of their most important pieces being healthy now for the majority of the season. One of their most, they're really only, they even have a 7-footer on the roster other than Jakob Poeltl? I don't think so. Like, they brought in Mo Bamba. They tried that out. Didn't work out. Project 6ix9ine is actually working, is the real story of this season. I still am of the position where even with the flat East, even as good as the Raptors are playing, even with the ceiling changing stuff that I actually did mention at like pretty early on in the season, that there is no team in the Eastern Conference that I do not think the Raptors could beat. That there's like no scenario. Do I think that they'd be favored? Obviously not. Like I don't know how many of these top teams they would be favored against. Like the Cavs have kind of found themselves. I still think that the Knicks would be a very, very tough out for this team. I think the Celtics have proven that they would be a very tough out for this team, especially if they do get Jason Tatum back, which I'm expecting they will. I'm not trying to be disrespectful of the Pistons season, and I do enjoy the Pistons, but there's definitely some what happens when a half-court defense locks in on Cade Cunningham for 7 games and what they can do outside of him. And one of the things that I really like about the Raptors is that they have multiple guys who can score in half-court sets. They don't shoot the ball particularly well, right? Like the three-point shooting has been an issue all year. But in terms of shot creators, I do think that Barnes, RJ, Quickly, and Ingram can all get theirs. So it doesn't feel like you can just kind of hyper-fixate on one dude the way that you can with the Pistons and feel like, oh, man, there's just not going to be an adjustment. I also really trust Darko, and I think that he's a very good coach and that over the course of a playoff series, he's going to be able to make good adjustments. But to the point about the chemistry that they have, and I said it there with Charlie, I really want to see how this plays out, and I've kind of been there all along. This is a ceiling team to a certain extent because of the way that they are tied up with their contracts. Colin Murray-Boyles is a very nice addition, and I do think he's a huge part of their future and that you can almost already say with certainty that he is a massive hit. But with the other 5 guys, a playoff series is a great stress test to see what exactly you have with those dudes, and hopefully Jakob Poeltl can be healthy by then and that this back injury is not just like a complete season derailer. But I don't view them as, hey, you want to get Anthony Davis in here, and especially since he's got that injury where he's like, no, I'm good. You're going to buy him, unless it was cents on the dollar. I'm obviously not in on the John Morant idea. I think that's a huge wave that you don't need to be taking, that you should be patient. But to me, the question now is going to come down to how willing are you to part with, say, a first-round pick or a guy like Grady Dick in a package like that, like a younger piece that you thought was a part of your young core, in order to acquire somebody that actually moves the needle, especially in the front court, because that's the most clear and obvious need for this team. I do think they could add more shooting. I keep thinking about trades like if Trey Murphy does become available, are you already in a spot where you're moving multiple firsts to get a guy like that? I don't think you are without the stress test. I just don't. And also there is a little part of me that goes, am I really trying to recreate the Pelicans in Toronto just with Scotty Barnes instead of Zion? I don't know if I'm trying to do that. But to me, that is now very much on the table for the Raptors, is trade this year's first-round pick. It's a very good draft. You still have an Eastern Conference that's tight enough where if you have a bad second half of the season, or it's later in the second half, but you get my point, that you could slip a little and potentially regret missing out on that pick. And I also look at teams like Oklahoma City and not just them, even the San Antonio Spurs, of just the value of stacking young pieces. Man, they added Colin Murray-Boyles, and I know he was a higher pick than what they're going to have this year, but just even you look back on some of the trades that they've made in terms of the Thad Young one, where they moved out of the first round, and I'm certainly not advocating for another trade like that, but they make that trade, and they could have ended up with Walker Kessler, who's had injury problems throughout his career, but my God, could you imagine if they had him as their backup big to Jakob Poeltl rather than what the situation is right now? Like, yeah, Mamu's been great, but if you're talking about like a big guy who can block shots in the middle of the paint, playing the pick and roll like that, yeah, they don't have that. So I'm reluctant to do it. I really am. Because I think that as they're currently standing, there's a good case to just say, hey, try to add a depth guy, and if you can, use like a smaller pieces in order to add just a center that gives you some credibility there that can actually play, not a Mo Bamba where it's a total lottery ticket. Yeah, good case to do that. But it's also countered by, man, these guys are playing so well. Like, you beat the Knicks tonight, and then you're 3 games ahead of the deadline. And you just beat the Thunder. You beat the Knicks. You had a fun win against the Blazers. You went on the West Coast road trip, won 4 of 2. Hard not to feel like there's some pressure on them to try to do a little something, knowing that fine of a margin in a watered down and tight East could get you on a deeper playoff run and give you more information on these guys. So, Armin, our resident basketball guy, where are you at with it? Like, Raptors first round pick, obviously on the table for like some players, but how aggressive are you right now with the pick or the idea that they should be adding?
I feel more on the fringes too, like you, in terms of add on the fringes, don't go crazy. To your Pistons point about seeing how they are in the half court in the playoffs, I think the same thing will happen with the Raps because we're first in the league in fast break points. And when that boils down to the half court, it's going to change. RJ Barrett's not going to have as much space. He's not going to be the same creator. But I think the one thing that will make Raptors fans' head explode, and also Bobby's and the teams, is getting out rebounded in the first round. Like giving up offensive rebounds in the first round when you're busting your behind, playing for Coach Darko, running up and down the court, doing everything you can. At the end of the day, 24 seconds runs out and the other team gets the ball still. Like that drives you crazy. So since we know that's already a weak point, if there's anything you could do to get a 5, and I personally want a 5 that blocks shots, and that's not Domantas Sabonis for me. Domantas is more of a take a charge.
Yeah, but he's
kind
rebounds.
of center. He does get boards, he's super physical.
He's Mr. Boards.
But we still don't have a 7-foot guy if he comes.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's the fit. And if CMB is part of your heavy rotation starting next year, which he's going to be, well, then you got Scotty, CMB, and Domantas.
I don't mind Sabonis. I do. I don't. Like, he's out of all the guys that have been talked about, to me, he's the best fit because, one, he's a great passer. So it continues to facilitate your offense. He can score. He can get you a bucket. And he rebounds the ball like crazy. And to the point about rim protection, I totally understand that. But this is a scenario where I go, don't let good be or perfect be the enemy of good. Right? Like, how many guys out there are going to be perfect? So what you're talking about, a 7-footer who can also get you a basket, who's also a great rebounder. Like, you know, was I talking to Grange about the Jaren Jackson Jr. stuff? It's like, okay, yeah, he rim protects. You know what he doesn't do?
Rebound.
Ever.
Yeah.
He does not rebound. I've seen multiple Jaren Jackson.
That's not my kind of guy.
Yeah, it's like, you've seen multiple performances by him where it's like he finishes a game, and if he has 4 rebounds, 5 rebounds, you go, yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, that's kind of the stat line. It was part of the reason why, if you remember, I wasn't high on Kaman Malawak. I don't know if you remember me doing the draft shows, but I went, the one thing that bothered me, watch him at Duke, and people were trying to make excuses for him, going like, well, because he's trying to block shots, and that's what they do with kind of guys like that, where he's like, well, they're not in rebounding position because they're trying to affect the shot. And I go, yeah, but also you're a 7-footer in college playing for Duke, and you guys are getting a lot of stops, and I watched a few games where you have 3 to 5 rebounds. I don't love it. I need you to be on the glass. I need you to be pulling some of those down. So either way, Sabonis, out of all the, like, sexy names that are out there right now, he's number 1 for me, more than Davis and more than Ja Morant, or just like Trey Murphy in terms of the all-in, splashy, multiple first-round picks trades. But I think that's where you're at, is this year's first is very much on the table. Making a trade where you're giving up multiple firsts for what this core has shown you in this year, that's where I can't get behind it, and I don't think they can change that ahead of the deadline.
Overpay if it is that perfect guy or the close
right
to
now,
perfect
though,
that you think. I don't know. Maybe it's an off-season thing.
That's what I'm saying, is I want to see it in the playoffs.
See what goes on. I
you just said
completely
it. You're
get
like,
that.
they're fast break points. They're not getting a board. It's like, okay, I'm high on the Raps. I think everybody is right now. Everybody's excited heading into the deadline. We've had all these conversations about the pressure. But, like, let's just play this out from a hypothetical scenario here. So Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Raptors, Cavs, 76ers. Do you think it's a lock that they would win any of those playoff series against any of those? Like,
right
no,
now, looking at it, literally the standings to me is pretty much how I would base the teams on who would win.
So you think the Raptors would be favored in a playoff series against the Cavs?
I don't know if Vegas thinks that, but I do. Like,
think
I would
they'd be
take the underdog if they were.
You think they'd be favored in a series with the Sixers if Embiid's healthy?
I still do.
I don't. I almost
I still
guarantee you
do.
that they won't be favored in that series. I think they'd be favored against the Heat, and I think they'd be favored against the Magic. Those two teams for sure. And then, like, I don't need to do Bulls, Hawks. Like, that's all. That's now the chaff. I'm just saying, my point is, the reason why I wouldn't be doing a multiple first-round picks trade, even if you are acquiring a really good player like a Trey Murphy type, is I could still see a scenario where you get into the postseason, you get knocked out in round 1.
It's very possible.
And you looked at that team and you went, ooh, maybe you jumped the gun a little bit here. So it's like, that's the catch-22 of this season.
Yeah.
The East is flatter. You're better than you thought you were going to be. You could add talent that could genuinely put you on a deep playoff run. Like, this is a stretch. Obviously, it's a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's impossible for the Raptors to come out and make a finals.
I agree.
I don't think it's impossible. And so it becomes the equation of how much do you push in for that when you're looking at next year and saying, well, the Pacers are going to get Halliburton back and they're going to have that top 5-4 pick. How good are they going to be? Who's going to get Giannis next year? Does that end up being an Eastern Conference team? What adjustments do the Knicks make? Do they trade Karl Anthony Towns and add somebody that makes more sense, right? Like, what do the Pistons do with another year of added desperation? Like, who comes available to you? And again, that thought of don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I'm saying right now there is no perfect scenario, because if you leave it as is, you're going to feel underwhelmed. If you try to make something too splashy and you fail, my God, it's going to get ugly. And I've said, and I stand by this, the one thing the Raptors do not have the luxury of is they own their own picks, but they're not in the position where they have other picks that they can play with the way that the Atlanta Hawks have right now, or the way that we saw San Antonio make the De'Aaron Fox trade. It does kind of make you look back a little bit differently about the way that they handled some of those deadlines earlier. But yeah, whatever. This is kind of where they're at right now. They don't have the luxury of Oklahoma City, where they're pulling from multiple different assets, so there's more wiggle room to make a mistake and then be able to recover from it the same way. The way that I'm looking at it is I'm trying to actually, I'm being a little bit of a coward. I'm willing to accept that.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is I would be moving for a good young big that you think can play solid minutes for you. I would have the first round pick on the table. What I'm not doing is multiple firsts for anybody. I'm certainly not doing like an RJ trade ahead of the deadline, unless it is for, you know what? Like, if you put him in a Sabonis deal, I would go, all right. Like, if that was a centerpiece of a Sabonis deal and you were throwing in a first, I would say, okay, I can actually at least think about this. But exactly, I'm not
Which is
stoked on it.
crazy, because if a year ago you told me RJ for Sabonis, I think a month or two I was like, I don't even want AD for RJ.
Yeah,
Just genuinely, like, in my heart.
I know.
But did you feel 2 weeks ago that the Raptors can make a run to the playoffs? Or to the finals, sorry? Because I feel like I feel like this West Coast road trip really changed.
I don't think they have
how I
don't think they have like a good chance of getting to a finals. Let's be very clear here. I just think that it's like
a puncher's chance.
Yeah, they got a puncher's chance.
Perfect world, they had been like knocking on the conference finals door last year, and now this year, because Ingram hasn't won a playoff series, Scottie hasn't won a playoff series, Darko hasn't won a playoff series as a head coach. So,
all right, quick break. We'll come back and hit what we missed. All right, quick here. Buffalo Bills went internal and they hired Joe Brady as their head coach. It ain't sexy. The sexy things were Davis Webb, Udinsky from the Jaguars. Those guys, they could have brought in a new, different offensive vision. I just don't know how they could have worked with Joe Brady. So you would have had to say, we're letting go of our head coach and we're letting go of our offensive coordinator. I don't know, but it felt like a pretty big swing. I like it. I think it's okay. I think if you're the Buffalo Bills, you're all right. My hope is that they consulted the quarterback, is the only thing. Is that they went to him and they were like, yeah, we're doing the Joe Brady thing. We're kind of keeping things internal. Like, again, it's a very safe move. I don't mind the move. I think they're all right. I just do find it always a little interesting when an organization decides, like, hey, we're moving off of our head coach, and now we want to see what our internal hire is going to do, our offensive coordinator with more responsibilities on his plate, and now who he's going to elevate into that position where he's going to have probably the biggest, collaboration with as a coach. So, yeah, it's fine. It's not sexy. It's not splashy. It's okay. It's safe. But I also don't think that it's one that if you're a fan of that team, you should be hating on either. Also, quickly, I actually don't mind the Mike McCarthy hire. And I really did like that he was getting choked up at the podium rooting for the Steelers. I kind of care about that. I'm sort of rooting for this guy now. We'll see you tomorrow.